I want you to picture, just for a second, the place where you would go to find absolute unshakable peace.
Mm.
I'm talking about that deep spiritual centering that, people spend their entire lives chasing. What does that place look like to you?
Well, for most people, I think it's somewhere quiet,
Right.
somewhere you can get away from other people. A silent cave, maybe?
Yeah, a silent cave in the Himalayas or a library in some high-level theological seminary, that smell of old paper and
A
dust.
solitary cabin in the woods.
Exactly. The point is, it's definitely not a commercial kitchen during the lunch rush.
No.
It's not a place filled with fire and smoke and clanging pots and people shouting. Chaos.
Right, total chaos.
And yet, the deep dive we are taking today is based on this massive paradox. We're exploring the idea that the secret to this deep spiritual peace wasn't found in the silence of a sanctuary, but right smack in the middle of all that noise.
It's a completely counterintuitive idea, isn't it? We're all trained to think that peace is the absence of noise. But today, we're looking at a figure who found peace inside the noise.
We are diving into a classic work called The Practice of the Presence of God. And it's kind of a strange little book because it wasn't really written as a book at all.
In the traditional sense.
It's a collection of letters, conversations, and just random notes from a man known to history as Brother Lawrence. And our mission today is pretty specific. We aren't just doing a biography.
No.
We want to answer the question, how can I practice the presence of God today?
Which is the question, isn't it? Because most of us feel like we have to choose.
Right.
We can either be, productive modern citizens with jobs and emails and everything else, or we can be spiritual contemplatives. We just don't see a way to do both at the same time.
Exactly. So we want to move beyond this idea that quiet time at 6 a.m. is the only time that counts and figure out how to integrate that spiritual awareness into the absolute chaos of modern life. But before we get into the how, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do, I think, regarding the who, because if you Google Brother Lawrence, you might get some confusing results.
It happens all the time. There is a very, very common case of mistaken identity in the sources.
Okay.
You have Brother Lawrence, who is our 17th century monk, and then you have Brother Andrew.
And they are very different guys.
Oh, very different. Brother Andrew is a 20th century figure. He's often called God's smuggler.
God's smuggler.
Yeah, he's the guy who drove a VW Beetle that was just packed with Bibles behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War.
Right. So he's the action hero version.
He's the action hero, whereas Brother Lawrence is the guy in the monastery kitchen making soup.
Okay.
However, and this is important, we'll get to this later, the guy making the soup actually had a profound impact on the guy driving the Beetle.
That's fascinating.
But we need to keep them distinct for now. Today is all about Brother Lawrence.
So let's unpack the man himself. Because whenever I hear about monks and saints, I tend to picture someone who was, born with a halo, floating 3 inches off the ground, never had a bad day.
Right.
But looking at his background, that is definitely not the case here.
Not even close. I mean, his birth name was Nicholas Herman. He was born around 1614 in the Lorraine region of France. And to understand him, you really have to understand the world he was born into.
And it wasn't a peaceful time.
Not at all. He was born into poverty. He was uneducated. He was effectively a peasant. But the defining event of his youth was the 30 Years' War.
Okay, I feel like we skipped that chapter in history class. I know it was bad, but how bad are we talking?
We're talking catastrophic. It was one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history.
Wow.
And it wasn't just, armies fighting in fields. It was famine. It was disease. It was mercenaries burning entire villages to the ground. The population of some German states dropped by 50%.
50%. That's unbelievable.
It was a time of absolute horror. And Nicholas Herman wasn't just watching this on the news. He was in it. He served as a soldier.
So he's a young man, probably a teenager, seeing the absolute worst of humanity.
He saw death up close. He saw the fragility of life. And he didn't escape unscathed.
He was injured.
He was captured by German troops at one point, accused of being a spy. They threatened to hang him.
Oh, my God.
He was eventually released, but later in the war, he suffered a significant injury to his sciatic nerve.
That's a serious, lifelong kind of injury.
It left him with a permanent limp. So just try to imagine a young man, maybe in his early 20s, physically broken, likely traumatized by the horrors of war. And he has no education, no trade.
He has nothing.
Nothing. So he's not entering the monastery because he feels this, romantic, holy calling.
She's desperate.
He's looking for refuge. He's looking for a way out of a world that has just chewed him up and spit him out.
That makes him so much more relatable. He's not a spiritual giant yet. He's a survivor. So he joins the Discalced Carmelite monastery in Paris in 1640. Now, I know there's a kind of hierarchy in these places. Where did he fit in?
He was at the very bottom.
Okay.
He entered as a lay brother. In the 17th century, if you were educated and could read Latin, you became a choir monk. You were doing the chanting, the studying, the theology.
It's important stuff.
The important stuff, right. If you were uneducated, like Nicholas, you became a lay brother. You were the workforce. You did the cleaning, the gardening, and, well, the cooking.
And this is where the irony really kicks in. He enters a monastery, presumably to find some peace and quiet. And where do they assign him?
To the kitchen.
The one place in the entire building where there is no peace and quiet.
It's actually tragic, in a way. The sources say he hated it. He had a natural aversion to the kitchen. But he was assigned there for 15 years.
15 years.
And we have to get rid of the Hollywood image of a monastery kitchen. This is not some silent, peaceful room where one monk is gently sluicing a carrot. This is a mess hall feeding over 100 men. It's hot. Remember, these are 17th century wood-burning stoves. It's smoky. It's incredibly loud. Pots are clanging. People are shouting orders. It is a high-stress environment.
So he's limping around on a bad leg, sweating over a hot stove, doing a job he hates in a completely chaotic environment. I mean, that sounds like a recipe for bitterness, not holiness.
It usually is, and that's what makes his story so enduring. Because most people in that situation would say, I can't wait to finish my shift so I can go to the chapel and finally pray to God.
Of course.
The assumption is that God is in the chapel and work is in the kitchen.
The classic divide.
Yeah.
The sacred versus the secular.
Exactly. But Brother Lawrence did something radical. He decided to refuse that divide. He decided that he wasn't going to wait until work was over to be with God.
He was going to find God.
He was going to find God in the omelets.
Let's dive right into that philosophy. We've been jokingly calling it omelet theology, but it's actually incredibly profound. He has this one quote that just stops me in my tracks every single time I read it.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
He says, "The time of business does not with me differ from the time of prayer. And in the noise and clatter of my kitchen, while several persons are at the same time calling for different things, I possess God in as great tranquility as if I were upon my knees at the Blessed Sacrament."
In the noise and clatter, I mean, that is the key. He's claiming that the environment doesn't dictate the connection to God.
But how, practically speaking, if I'm in a meeting and 3 people are yelling at me, or if I'm trying to get dinner ready and my kids are screaming, my brain is not in tranquility mode.
No.
My brain is in fight or flight mode. How did he actually bridge that gap?
He did it by changing the motive of the work. This is the core of his method, if you can even call it that. He realized that the activity itself doesn't matter nearly as much as the love with which it's done.
Okay.
He famously said, "It is not needful to have great things to do. I turn my little omelet in the pan for the love of God."
I turn my little omelet in the pan for the love of God. That's so simple.
It sounds simple, but think about the theological weight of that statement. In the 17th century, the church was very, very focused on great acts.
Right, like pilgrimages.
Pilgrimages, grand liturgies, martyrdom. Lawrence is saying, no, God is just as glorified by a monk flipping an egg, if that monk is doing it, as an act of love for his creator.
It sort of democratizes spirituality. You don't have to be a bishop or a theologian.
Exactly.
You just need to be willing to do the small thing you're doing right now with a big heart.
It reclaims the mundane. I mean, if you accept Lawrence's premise, then there's no such thing as wasted time. Your commute isn't wasted time. Changing a diaper isn't wasted time. Filing a tax return isn't wasted time. If you can frame it as, Lord, I'm doing this necessary task as an act of obedience and love to you, it becomes an altar. The task itself becomes worship.
That is a massive shift. But I want to push back on this a little bit. It sounds great on paper, but did it actually work for other people? Or was Brother Lawrence just, a unicorn, some guy with a unique brain wiring who could pull this off?
Yeah. That is the ultimate test, isn't it? Is it replicable?
Yeah.
And this is where the history gets really fascinating. Because this little book of letters and notes, it didn't just stay in a French monastery, it exploded outward. And we have records of at least 5 major world-changing figures who took this kitchen theology and applied it to radically different lives.
This is the ripple effect part of our deep dive. And looking at this list, these are not copy-paste monks. These are very different people. Let's start with John Wesley.
Okay, the founder of Methodism. So now we're jumping to the 18th century.
Yeah.
Wesley was a powerhouse, an organizer. He's the guy who took the church out of the cathedral and into the open fields.
Right, he was preaching to coal miners.
Coal miners, factory workers, the unwashed masses. He was an evangelist to the working class.
So why did a high-energy, very practical guy like Wesley care about a quiet monk?
Because Wesley had a problem. He was telling these coal miners that they needed to live holy lives. But these guys worked 14-hour days in absolutely brutal conditions. They couldn't go to a monastery.
No.
They couldn't spend 4 hours in morning prayer. Wesley needed a theology that actually worked for the working class.
And there's Brother Lawrence.
Exactly. Wesley recommended Lawrence's book to the early Methodists because it validated their existence. It told the coal miner, you can be close to God in the mine.
Wow.
It told the factory worker, your labor matters to God. It moved holiness from the realm of religious professionals to the lay people. It was the perfect tool for the Methodist movement.
That makes perfect sense. It's so practical.
Yeah.
But then you jump to the 20th century and you have A.W. Tozer. Now, Tozer wasn't a field preacher in the same way. He was a serious, some would say grumpy evangelical prophet. He wrote The Pursuit of God.
Tozer is such an interesting contrast. He was writing in the 1940s and 50s, a time when American Christianity was becoming very corporate.
Very busy.
Very busy, big programs, big buildings, lots of noise, lots of activity. Tozer looked at all of this and he called it shallow.
He felt people knew about God but didn't actually know God.
Precisely. Tozer felt the church was drowning in theology and activity but starving for intimacy. And he used Brother Lawrence as a corrective. He argued that we had lost the art of experiencing God.
Experiencing God.
For Tozer, Lawrence proved that you can have experiential knowledge, actually feeling God's presence without abandoning sound doctrine. He loved Lawrence because Lawrence didn't just believe God was there, he felt it.
So for Wesley, it was about work. For Tozer, it was about depth.
Yeah.
Okay, now what about Frank Laubach? This is the one that seems the most systematic to me.
Frank Laubach is a hero in the world of education. He started the Each One Teach One literacy movement. He's personally responsible for teaching millions and millions of people to read.
Incredible.
But in the 1930s, while working as a missionary in the Philippines, he hit a spiritual wall. He felt ineffective. He felt distant from God.
So he decides to run an experiment on himself.
Being an educator, he wanted a method. He wanted a technique. He read Brother Lawrence and decided to try to operationalize it. He called it the game with minutes.
The game with minutes. Okay, how did that work?
The goal was to see if he could bring God to his mind for at least 1 second out of every single minute of the waking day.
1 second. Every minute. That sounds exhausting. I can't even focus on my breath for 10 minutes without thinking about my grocery list.
It was exhausting, and Laubach was very, very honest about that. His journals from this time are fascinating because they are full of failure. He'd write, I failed completely this morning. I went 3 hours without thinking of him. But then he'd have days where he hit a rhythm, and he described it not as a burden, but as a door opening. He claimed that on the days he managed to play the game well, his productivity skyrocketed, his anxiety vanished, and he felt a strange new power in his teaching.
That's the data point I like. He wasn't retreating to a cave to do this. He was using it to fuel his actual work in the world.
Yes, he essentially tried to hack his own brain to create a continuous loop of awareness.
Okay, so we have a teacher. Now we get to the action hero we mentioned at the start. Brother Andrew. God's smuggler. This is the one that confuses me the most because smuggling Bibles through Checkpoint Charlie seems like the absolute opposite of kitchen tranquility.
It is the opposite environment, but it's the exact same internal need. Brother Andrew was operating in high-stress, life-or-death situations. If he got caught, he was going to a Soviet prison camp. It was that serious.
So how does turning an omelet with love help you when a border guard is tearing apart your car looking for contraband?
It changes the definition of courage. Brother Andrew said that in those moments, he didn't need a complex theology. He needed to know right now, in this second, God is here.
Okay.
He used the practice of the presence to ground himself in the immediate moment. It wasn't about God will save me later. It was God is in this car with me right now.
It prevented panic?
Panic comes from feeling alone and overwhelmed.
Right.
If you are practicing the presence, you are never alone. And it allowed him to sit there with a calm pulse while guards with machine guns were inspecting his trunk. That is kitchen peace applied to Cold War danger.
That is incredible. And finally, number 5, Thomas Merton. The Trappist monk.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like we're going full circle. A monk reading another monk.
But Martin was a very intellectual monk. He was a writer, a thinker, a correspondent with world leaders. And there is a temptation in those circles to become spiritually elite, to think, I understand the mystical union better than the common people do.
The ivory tower of spirituality.
Right. And Merton loved Brother Lawrence because Lawrence was the antidote to elitism. Here was this guy who barely knew Latin, who peeled potatoes for a living, and yet he knew God better than the scholars. Merton used Lawrence to remind himself and his readers that the goal isn't smart theology, the goal is love. It kept Martin grounded in the simplicity of it all.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You have one simple method that works for the uneducated worker, the grumpy prophet, the systematic teacher, the daring smuggler, and the intellectual monk.
Yeah.
That is a robust theory.
It proves the universality of the principle. It's not about your personality or your job. It's about your posture.
But I have to play devil's advocate for a moment. We have a lot of listeners who might be coming from a more conservative evangelical background. And sometimes when you start talking about practicing the presence and 17th century Catholic mystics, the New Age alarm bells can start ringing.
Sure. Is this just mindfulness, or is this some kind of unbiblical mysticism?
Right. Is this just manifesting God?
Yeah.
How do we sanity check this against the Bible?
That is a very fair question, and it's one that people like A.W. Tozer had to wrestle with. The consensus among the sources is that Brother Lawrence's work should be seen as a devotional aid, not a replacement for Scripture.
Okay.
But when you actually map his practices against the Bible, they align surprisingly well.
Give me the map. Where does it connect?
We'll start with the most obvious one. 1 Thessalonians 5.17. Pray without ceasing.
The verse everyone knows, but nobody understands how to do.
Exactly. We usually think it's hyperbole, pray a lot. But Lawrence took it literally. He asked, what would it actually look like to pray without stopping? And his answer was the continual conversation. He wasn't inventing a new doctrine. He was just trying to obey an existing command.
What about the abiding part? I hear that word a lot.
John 15.4, Jesus says, abide in me and I in you. The Greek word for abide means to live in, to dwell, to stay.
It doesn't mean visit me on Sunday mornings?
No. It implies a constant state of residence. Lawrence was simply figuring out what it means to abide while he was peeling potatoes.
And the do-it-all-for-love part, the omelet.
1 Corinthians 10.31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. That is the omelet principle verbatim. Lawrence isn't teaching a new gospel. He's teaching a method for living out the gospel we already have.
So it's not about emptying your mind like in some Eastern meditation practices.
No, that's a crucial distinction.
It's about filling your mind with a specific person.
That's it. Mindfulness is often about awareness of self or awareness of your breath. This is awareness of God. It's fundamentally relational. It's not just I am aware, it's I am here with you.
Okay, I'm sold on the theory, I'm sold on the history.
Yeah.
But now we have to face the beast. Modern life.
The great distraction machine.
Yes. Brother Lawrence had noise and clatter, but he didn't have a smartphone. He didn't have push notifications. He didn't have a boss Slack messaging him at 9 p.m.
Right.
The mission of this deep dive is to figure out how we do this today. Is it even possible, or are our brains just too fried?
It is possible, but it requires a bit of a battle, a conscious effort. The sources suggest that we have to adapt Lawrence's principles to the digital age, and the first step is the hardest one.
Which is?
You have to stop compartmentalizing.
The sacred-secular split again.
You have to accept that your phone, your email, and your commute are not God-free zones. You have to intentionally bring him into the device, into the car, into the meeting.
Okay, give me tactics.
Yeah.
I want the how-to. If I wake up tomorrow and I want to try this, what do I actually do?
Based on his letters, we can distill 3 specific practical tactics. The first is what we can call the conversational approach.
Which means?
Stop making speeches to God. Most of us, when we pray, we switch into a formal mode. Dear Heavenly Father, I beseech thee. It takes mental energy to formulate a proper prayer. Lawrence suggests you just chat.
Like micro-prayers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You open an email that makes you angry. Instead of just fuming or venting, you shoot a quick thought to God, Lord, I am really annoyed right now. Help me handle this. Boom. Done. You're back to work.
It's like having a running text thread with God all day.
That is a perfect modern analogy. Just keep the chat window open.
Okay, tactic number 2.
The check-in. Lawrence talks about thinking off and on God. In a modern context, this can be triggered by transitions. Every time you switch tasks, leaving the house, getting in the car, opening a new tab on your browser, use that split second to check in.
Just a quick thought.
Yeah. Lord, are we still good? I'm doing this next thing for you.
I like that. It uses the interruptions that already exist as triggers instead of trying to fight them.
And this includes what he calls diversions. This is a part people often miss.
Diversions, like entertainment, free time.
Yes. The commentary on his work suggests asking, can I thank God for this moment while you are relaxing? If you are watching a great movie or eating a really good burger, just acknowledge the giver of the good gift.
Lord, this burger is amazing. Thank you.
Exactly. It turns leisure into worship. It takes away that weird guilt we sometimes feel for resting.
I love that. Okay, finally, the third tactic.
The motive shift. This is for the stuff you absolutely hate doing.
The laundry, the taxes, the data entry, the TPS reports.
The things that feel meaningless and draining, you have to mentally pause and re-tag them. I'm going to scrub this toilet with excellence, not because I love toilets, but because I love God, and this is my act of service right now.
That sounds hard. I mean, really hard.
It is hard, but it completely changes the experience of the work. It stops being drudgery and it starts being service. It gives meaning to the meaningless.
And the payout. Why should I do all this mental gymnastics? What's the benefit?
The payout is the one thing everyone is looking for. Peace.
But not just any peace, right?
Not circumstantial peace. See, we usually think, I'll be at peace when this project is finally done, or I'll be at peace when the kids are asleep. That is a trap, because there is always another project. There is always another crisis.
So Lawrence offers a peace that doesn't depend on the timeline or the circumstance.
Exactly. If your peace comes from the fact that God is here with me, well, God is always here. So the peace can be constant, even when the kitchen is on fire. It creates what he called a steady, humble dependence. You aren't freaking out because you aren't handling it alone.
That is the secret sauce, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about controlling the chaos. It's about who is in the chaos with you.
That's it. That's the whole practice right there.
This has been such a refreshing deep dive. It's just wild to think that a guy peeling potatoes in 1650 has the answer to my 2026 burnout.
Truth is truth. It doesn't have an expiration date. Brother Lawrence teaches us that God is near, that prayer is relational, and that ordinary life, your actual messy, boring life, is the primary stage for holiness.
You don't need a different stage. You just need your life.
You got it.
I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought from the source material. It's a quote from Lawrence that really summarizes his entire worldview. He said, "There is not in the world a kind of life more sweet and delightful than that of a continual conversation with God."
Sweet and delightful. Not burdensome, not religious duty. Delightful.
That's the goal. So here's the challenge for you, the listener. We're not asking you to join a monastery today. We're asking you to maybe try the game with minutes, or even just the omelet mindset for the next hour.
Yeah, just the next hour. Whether you're driving or washing dishes or sitting in a really boring meeting.
Try to invite God into that specific task. See if the noise and clatter don't fade just a little bit. See if you can find that kitchen peace. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.